When I first started developing FMDataLab back in September of 2023, my goal was to create a powerful Football Manager data tool that could leverage the data provided by Football Manager to help you analyse the best players in your save with minimal effort. While the current role scoring calculator tool does a decent job in achieving that goal, Football Manager provides much richer data in the form of statistics. These stats can be used to analyse players who are performing at a high level regardless of their attribute values, similar to how scouting works in the real world. For the past couple of months now, I've been working away on developing a new tool called Moneyball, which uses a statistical data approach to help you recruit more effectively. But what is Moneyball? Moneyball, initially a book written by Michael Lewis, then adapted to a movie in 2011, starring Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill, is based on the true story of Billy Beane, the general manager of the Oakland A's baseball team during the 2002 season, and follows his attempts to assemble a competitive team to compete against the big market teams in the division, but on a limited budget. Billy Beane and his assistant general manager Paul DePodesta built a team of undervalued talent by adopting an evidence-based sabermetric approach to scouting, which involved using player statistics to discover high-performing players that were undervalued in the market. This statistical approach targeted stats that were considered undervalued in the sport and allowed Oakland to take a team with the lowest wage budget in the division to a 20-game winning streak. So how does Moneyball fit into Football Manager, and more importantly, FMDataLab? So rather than using attributes to judge a player's ability, Moneyball will focus on using the stats provided by Football Manager. While attributes can tell you how good a player could be in a role, statistics can tell you just how good a player actually is in that moment in time. Now at this point it is important to note that FMDataLab's Moneyball tool isn't some sort of hack that will magically uncover the best players for each role or position. Rather, it's a tool to assist with player performance analysis and recruitment, helping you determine if a player's stats align with your playing style or are undervalued compared to their performance. Now, there are already some tools out there that take this Moneyball approach. Now, I'd recommend that you give some of these a go, as they may fulfill your requirements, and the FMDataLab Moneyball tool might be a little overkill or maybe not as customizable as you would like. But these other tools mostly require some knowledge of how to use spreadsheets, or for the web app based tools, they are quite limited in their scope and their details. With FMDataLab's Moneyball tool, I wanted to bridge that gap, so the tool covers a lot of features, includes a lot of data to analyse, and is somewhat customizable. If you haven't watched my very first video that was on the role scoring calculator, I'd suggest giving that just a quick watch before going on to the next steps of this video, as I do cover some of these upcoming steps in more depth in that first video. There's also a Moneyball tutorial page with multiple sections if you prefer to read instructions. To use the FMDataLab Moneyball tool, you will first need to download the specific Football Manager views that have all the relevant stat columns. To do so, you can go to the tutorial section here, click download views, and there will be a download button here. So if you click this, you'll be brought to a MediaFire page. Now, this zip file will have all of the row scoring and Moneyball files. If you just want the Moneyball views, you can go to tutorials and the Moneyball page, and there'll be a section here for downloading Moneyball views. And you click this button here, you'll be brought to a different MediaFire page that will just have the free Moneyball views. Now that you have the FMDataLab Moneyball views zip file downloaded, your next step will be to import the Moneyball views within that zip file into the free separate screens in FM. First, you'll need to extract the zip file, and this will create this FMDataLab views directory. So open up this FMDataLab's view directory and navigate to the Moneyball directory. Once in the Moneyball directory, you will need to move these free view files into the views directory within the Football Manager 2024 directory. Now, this can be found in your Sports Interactive directory, so depending on your system, this will be in a different location. Now, usually on Windows, it's found within your Documents, and on Mac, it's within your Library directory, then within Application Support. If you do not have a Views directory within the Football Manager 2024 directory, all you need to do is create one. Then you can simply move your free Moneyball view files into your Football Manager's Views directory. Now, as I mentioned before, in my very first video, I showed how to import the row scoring views into Football Manager. Now, this is essentially the same except you're choosing a different file, but you can do this within the squad, player search and shortlist screens in Football Manager. So I'll just show you how to do it in the player search screen, but it's the same for all three. So first you go over to the scouting page, and then here then hover over the players tab and select players in range. Then go over to this views button, hover over custom, then select import view, and then in your views folder you want to select the FMDataLab Moneyball player search view. So make sure it's the Moneyball one and not the row scoring one. So you'll be able to tell just by the statistics on screen. There are a few caveats and restrictions that you should be aware of before you export any Moneyball player list from Football Manager. First and foremost, ensure that you're using the Moneyball views provided before exporting. Using the row scoring views or any other view, you will get errors. You also need to use the English language setting. Other languages have different column names in the export, which at this moment in time I'm not handling, but maybe in the future, so apologies for the inconvenience there. There is a maximum limit of 10,000 players per exported file. This is to prevent too much of a performance hit while navigating the Moneyball tool, but you still may come across some performance issues due to the sheer amount of data that's being compiled and then rendered on screen. And off the back of that, there is a max file upload of 32 megabytes. The next step is to export Football Manager data before you can upload the exported data to FMDataLab. So before exporting player data, you will most likely want to refine your list of players, particularly regarding minutes played. Within Football Manager, filtering your player list to only include those players who have played at least a certain number of minutes will help narrow down the player list to players who are frequently getting minutes. This improves data integrity, especially for the per 90 stats, as players who have played less than 90 minutes or in or around that time tend to have inflated stat values and can therefore be unreliable. You may also want to filter on other statistics to set a minimum value or reduce the player list by filtering on other columns such as age, position, transfer value, etc. Essentially, you want to exclude players who have no interest in signing or you have no interest in signing for your club. Be aware that leagues outside of your selected playable or viewable leagues will have less accurate data. This is due to their detail level not playing out matches in full, leading to less reliable results. Consequently, the statistics from these leagues should be viewed with caution, and you may want to filter out these leagues from your list of players so you can reliably compare stats across your playable or viewable leagues. Exporting data is most beneficial whenever there is a substantial dataset available. Attempting an export before the season commences will yield limited results because no one's played any games yet, so there's no stats available. It is also crucial to remember that different leagues have varying start dates. For instance, while the English Premier League kicks off, leagues such as those in Sweden or in the Republic of Ireland, for example, will already be at least midway through their season. This will result in asynchronous player stats. This implies that certain aggregate statistics, such as total goals, may not be directly comparable due to the differing number of games played across the various leagues in your player list. Consequently, comparing a player who has scored a certain number of goals in England with a player who's achieved the same in Ireland is less meaningful, as the total number of matches played between these two players differ significantly. With all that being said, I think the most optimal times to export your data are at the season's end and during the mid-season transfer window. Now you will want to export a player list from one of the screens within Football Manager. I will just show a very basic example of how to do this on the player search screen, although the process is essentially the same on the other two screens. First off, go to the scouting screen once again, hover over the player tab and select players in range. Now it's important to double check here that you have the Moneyball view selected as the current view. Then click on the first player on the list to select them. To select all players in the list, press either Ctrl or Command and then the letter A. Then to bring up the print dialog, press either Ctrl or Command and the letter P. Then ensure that web page is selected and then press OK. Then give your export a name and a location that you can easily find again. And once you're ready, click the Save button and this will export a HTML file to your selected location. Now with your HTML file exported from Football Manager, you can now upload your file to FMDataLab. So you can do this by going to the new Moneyball page you can find up here in the navigation. You'll be brought to this Moneyball screen, has some of the restrictions and where you can download views and how to import and export. So first we're just going to click this Moneyball upload button. I'll bring up a file explorer and you can just select one of your Moneyball HTML files. This will bring you to this Moneyball table view. So at first, it may seem like there is a lot going on here, but let's break it down component by component. Let's just start with the table itself. The layout and structure will be fairly familiar to you if you've used the role scoring table before. A lot of the player information you can see here, with some minor differences like this asking price here, and there's just a preferred foot column instead of left and right foot. As well as the player info and the transfer column groups, there's no longer obviously the position column groups for each of the roles within each position. This time you have an additional group for appearances, so this is statistics related to their appearances, like their starts and their minutes played, average rating, etc. Then you have all these statistic column groups, and each stat is grouped into the relevant column groups. So you can see here with goals, obviously there's goals including goals per 90, minutes per goal, etc. Some of the stat columns are directly from Football Manager. Others are generated stats based on other stats from Football Manager, such as expect assists over performance, which doesn't exist in Football Manager but is derived from subtracting a player's expected assists from their total assists. If you are unsure of what the meaning is of a statistic, there are a number of columns with a tooltip icon here that briefly describes the stat. Like here on the expected assists over performance column, it states that this stat indicates whether a player is overperforming or underperforming their expected assists. Basically, is a player making more assists or less assists than they're expected to? A positive number here stipulates that they are getting more assists than expected. Each row in a stat column displays the player's value for that stat in a color-coded badge, very similar to how the row scores work in the row scoring tool. The color scale ranges from red to green. A shade closer to green indicates that the player performs better in that stat compared to all players in your uploaded file. These colors provide a quick visual indication of each player's performance within each stat. On top of all the general statistics, there is also action stats. These are a group of metrics that are used to determine a player's proficiency in a particular style of play per 90 minutes. So these action stats are factor-based calculations using a range of stats where each stat is weighted by a value between 0 and 10, indicating its importance in the action. Now, you will be able to edit these weights for each stat to fit your requirements, but I will get to that in a moment. For example, we have the defensive actions per 90, which is a weighted sum between the clearances, interceptions, shots blocked, pressures completed, tackles completed, key tackles, headers won, key headers, and each of those statistics we get the per 90 value for each, and then using a weighted calculation sums for all these figures together to get the average defensive actions per 90. As well as the action stats, we also have computed stats. So computed stats are archetypal stats which are also derived from factor-based calculations, but instead of using stats raw value figures, it uses percentile figures from multiple stats that fit the archetype. I'll get into what percentiles are in a moment, but just think of it as a ranking of how good a player is in any given stat for now. Some of these computer stats are derived from archetypes directly from Football Manager itself and use the stats that FM figures are key to that archetype in the computer stats factor-based calculation. So for example, we have the creative winger, which is a weighted sum between the goals per 90, non-penalty XG per 90, assists per 90, expected assists per 90, dribbles per 90, pass completion percentage, crosses completed, and progressive passes per 90. So I said this uses the percentile values of these, so it indicates how much creative influence a player has in regards to a wide midfielder position against all the other players in the list. So when you first come to this table, you might be thinking that there's not an awful lot of stats visible, and that's on purpose. That's because a number are hidden by default initially. This default column group visibility settings reduces horizontal scrolling and prevents sluggish performance due to large amount of data being rendered on screen at once. There are a large number of unique statistic columns, I think it's 169 to be exact at the time of recording. These stats are then grouped into column groups, so like the goals and assists, etc. So just above the table there are a number of checkboxes you can see up here. Each signify the visibility of each stat column group. So clicking on any of these will then add all the stats therein. So you can see the shots now appears on screen and has all of the shot related statistics, and I can toggle it off again so it's hidden. So you can make all column groups visible with the view all button here. However, this may lead to some performance issues, especially with larger player lists, but you can try it out and see how it feels on your end. Also, by default, the filters on all columns in the table are visible. That's
these little inputs here. You can hide these filters by clicking the hide filters button here. So it's a new piece of functionality I've added. It's also in the row scoring table. Initially you will see that hiding the filters reduces the visual clutter and also narrows the column widths, allowing you to view more columns at once and minimizing the horizontal scrolling. Hiding the filters will also reduce some column widths further by using abbreviated column headers. In that case you can hover over the column header to see the full column title, just like this one here, which is shots on target. So there's also this export to CSV, which is also in the row scoring table, and this will download the current table columns and the data into a CSV file, allowing you to use the data from the Moneyball table as you need. Next, I'll draw your attention to the upload button. Clicking this button will open up your file explorer to select a new Moneyball HTML file so you can quickly analyze new Moneyball data without even leaving the screen. As I mentioned earlier, you can update the weights in the factor-based calculation stats like the action and computed stats, and you can do so by clicking the edit computed weights button. This works fairly similar to the attribute weights in the row scoring tool. Clicking this edit computed weights button will open up a dialog window with a form which includes a list of all computed and action stats that weights can be edited. Opening up any of the computed or action stats in the accordion list, like the defensive actions per 90 here, will display all stats used in the computed stat calculation and their multiplier factors in the adjacent inputs. If you decide that a particular stat should be weighted higher, lower, or not at all, you can adjust the weightings for each stat from 0 to 10. The higher the number, the more important that stat becomes in the weighted calculation. You can use 0 to exclude the stat from the calculation if you do not deem it necessary for the action or computed stat. So I will update a few stat weights here on the defensive actions per 90 stat. To then save your changes, all you need to do is click the Update Moneyball Weights button down here at the bottom. Your Moneyball data will then be recalculated with the updated weights being applied, which will update the computed stat values for each player in your list. When any computed stat weights have been updated from the default, you will be notified of these changes in multiple places to help you keep track of these changes. The first place you will be notified is within the computed weights form itself. A warning icon will appear next to any computed stat with the updated weights, like on the defensive actions per 90 here. That same warning icon will also appear next to specific stats that have been updated within the computed stat. You can see here on interceptions, also shots blocked, and you can also see what the default stat weight was for that updated stat if you want to revert, and the same for key headers. If you updated another stat weight, again that warning icon appears and informs you of what the default stat weight was. You can also find the same warning icon on the Edit Computed Weights button to notify you which computed stat weights have been updated. You can also find the same warning icon in the table on the computed stat column to notify you of which stat weights have been updated within that stat. To reset all computed weights back to their default values, you can do so from within the Edit Computed Weights form. You can click on the Reset Moneyball Weights button down here at the bottom. You will then get a dialog pop up to first ensure that you're okay with these changes being applied. So now you can see that all the warning icons are gone that were previously there. If you only want to reset an individual stat weights, so if I update two stat weights here, both for the defensive and attacking actions per 90, like so, I can then just click the Reset Attacking Actions per 90 weights button within the selected stat, and this will only reset the attacking actions per 90 weights, while the defensive actions per 90 weight changes will still be persistent. Clicking on the Show Percentiles button, you will see the stat column row values update to show percentile rank for each player's stat value, rather than the stat value itself. The percentiles provide a clear context for understanding how each player's stat performs relative to the same stat against all other players in your uploaded file. The percentile value indicates the percentage of players whose stat value falls below that player's base stat value. For example, here we have Raheem Sterling, who is in the 82nd percentile of goals scored with 11 goals. This means that Sterling has scored more goals than 82% of the players in the dataset. The Moneyball tutorial page has a What are the Statistic Percentiles section that goes more in depth on percentiles, including how are statistic percentiles calculated if you are curious. In addition to the table view, there is also a scatter chart view that presents the same data in a different format. You can access the scatter chart view by clicking the Show Chart button in the Moneyball table view. You can return to the table view at any point by clicking the Show Table button. The scatter chart is a visual method to compare two stats together on an X and Y axis. By default, the stat on the X axis will be the XG over performance, and on the y-axis it will be the goals per 90 stat. You can, however, update the x and y-axis values to compare any two available stats in the x and y-axis dropdowns. So I can update the x-axis stat here to be xg per shot instead, and you'll see all the data points in the scatter chart update to reflect this change. You can update the minimum and the maximum x and y stats to filter values to update the scatter chart data, just as you would do with the column filters in the Moneyball table view. Say I only want to see players that are overperforming their XG by at least one goal. I can add a minimum of 1 to the XG over performance stat filter. Then I can also update the goals per 90 so that I only see players that have goals per 90 value of at least 0.5. This will reduce the number of data points to make it easier to find the player you're looking for. Now, any filter changes applied here are also applied in the table view. So if you go back to the table view here, you will see, I'm not sure how many data points there is off the top of my head, but you can see here actually there's 17 results now in the table. So now if I were to update the XG per 90 value here on the table to be 0.6, this will reduce the list further now to 10 results. Now fingers crossed this is persisted in the chart view. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Happy days, because that would have been so embarrassing if I got that wrong. So just like the table view, you can also apply filters from all columns in the scatter chart view by clicking this filters button. And just open up a panel with all the column groups in an accordion list. Within each group you'll find columns and their filter inputs just like they are in the table. So if any filters are applied, it'll default open the section. So you can see we've obviously filtered on the goals section, so that one's open by default, but maybe we want players that have, let's see if we can filter out any players. We do 30. I've probably filtered them all out. Well, I see 2 there. We'll bring it down a little bit, so say 15. So yeah, we're down to 4 players now, just to make sure that's still persists on the table view as well. Additionally, a warning icon will appear on the filters button, and hovering over this icon will show which filters are applied. Clicking the reset filters button below the filters button will clear all filters in the scatter chart view. This will also reset all filters in the table view. There's also this vertical reference line you'll see, so dashed line. So this identifies the average value of the x-axis values from the dataset. So this is the average number of XG over performance between all of these players in the dataset, which is minus 0.15. Additionally, there's also a horizontal reference line for the average of the y-axis values, which in this case is the average goals per 90, which is 0.22. Now these reference lines act as a benchmark, helping you to set expectations for players in the dataset. Both of these reference lines help split the scatter chart into 4 quadrants, providing clear insights into the data. Each quadrant represents a different combination of the 2 stats, making it easier to see which players excel in both stats, which excel in one but not the other, and which underperform in both. Splitting the chart helps quickly identify outliers. This can highlight exceptional or underperforming players. These quadrants make it easier to compare the relative performance of players, allowing you to quickly see how players stack up against the average and each other. So we use this one example. This quadrant here is for players with a low XG over performance but a high goals per 90, and the bottom left one is basically they're poor at both. Very little goals per 90 and very low XG over performance. So you kind of want to filter these, but you're not really interested in any of these players. So the bottom right is players that have a higher XG over performance but haven't scored that many goals. So we take this player here, so Adam Lallana, who's quite high in the XG over performance percentile, 92nd percentile on that one, but very low in the goals per 90. So they're in the 53rd percentile. And then the last one is basically they're good at both. They're good at overperforming their XG, and they do score a lot of goals per 90. So you're probably seeing players probably like Haaland. No, that's not Haaland. No, where is he? Maybe in this save he didn't do. Oh, there he is there. He's not quite the top. So you have a player like Isak, who is in the 100th percentile for XG performance, which means he's scoring more goals than expected, but he's also scoring quite a lot of goals per 90. So he's got 0.72, which puts him in the 97th percentile. So then you have a player like Eddie Nketiah, who's in the 100th percentile for goals per 90, little lower in the XG over performance, but he's obviously not played as much as a player like Isak. So he's got 1,300 minutes compared to Isak's 3,000 minutes. The scatter chart can display a maximum of 5,000 data points at once to prevent performance issues, though larger data sets you may still find some sluggishness depending on your device. So like this here file, I have 10,000 players in, I just need to refine my filters down to bring it down to 5,000 players or less. So you can do that with, minutes, or let's say minutes played. Let's get them down to 1,000. There we go. So I got that down to a smaller number of players under 5,000. Not sure exactly how much. I'll probably display that somewhere. So I might change this by the time I upload. Who knows? I might forget. Remind me if I don't. Just like in the row scoring table, we also have the player panel, which includes more granular information pertaining to that player. By clicking on a player's name, you can access the player panel for the selected player, so let's select Bukayo Saka here. There are a few sections within the player panel to note. The first being the comparison chart. Here you can compare a player's stat values from all stats used in the calculation for a selected stat from the Statistic dropdown. The Statistic dropdown includes all action and computed stats. The default value will be the computed or action stat with the highest percentile value for that player. The player statistic data will be displayed in the radar chart with the purple line, and you can hover over any line to see a tooltip, the stat and percentile value for each stat within the selected statistic dropdown. There's also a position dropdown. Here you can choose a position to narrow down the average stat values for that position from all players in your uploaded file. The default value will be all positions. Updating the position dropdown here will also affect the position dropdown in the key area section below, which I'll get to in a moment. The data for the position will be displayed in the radar chart with a green line. The orange line is the average stat values in a chosen position that are derived from all players that played over 2,000 minutes at the end of the 2024 season from the top 5 leagues from a dataset acquired from an FM simulated save. The yellow line are the stats for the player with the highest percentile ranking in your uploaded file for the chosen statistic. This value is not affected by the position value, so you may see a player who cannot play in the selected position here. I do plan on changing this in the future. You can also compare stats with one other player in your uploaded file with the player dropdown. Here you can select a player and their data will be displayed with a light blue line. The next section is the key areas. The key areas section provides a high-level overview of a player's performance in critical aspects of the game compared to those most active in those areas. These areas include shots, passing, crossing, chances created, tackles, heading, pressing, and goalkeeping. Each area is depicted in a circular proportional chart, at least I believe that's what they're called, I'm not really sure. The outer circle represents the maximum value for that area among all players in your uploaded file, indicating the maximum number of that action that a player could reach. All the inner circles stipulate the percentage of that statistic against the maximum value. In the passing area here, the outer circle represents the maximum value of passes attempted per 90 from all players in your uploaded file. The first inner circle will be the chosen player's passes attempted per 90 value and its percentage of the maximum passes attempted per 90 value, followed by their passes completed per 90 value, then followed by the progressive passes per 90, and finally their open play key passes per 90. This allows you to visualize how the chosen player's passes attempted per 90 value compares to the player who has the most passes attempted per 90, as represented by the size of the player's circle from the passes attempted per 90 compared to the maximum passes per 90 value. So if a player's passes attempted per 90 value circle looks about half the size of the outer circle, it means that this chosen player's passes attempted per 90 is about half that of the most active passer of the ball. This also allows, for example, to easily visualize how many passes completed per 90 the chosen player has relative to their attempts. You can hover over each key area to view a tooltip which includes all the statistics used within the key area, and for each statistic it will include the chosen player's stat value, their percentile rank, and the maximum value for that statistic from all players in your uploaded file. Using the position dropdown here, you can narrow down the comparative maximum figures to be isolated to the selected position. This default value will also be all positions, just like in the comparison chart. And also, updating the position dropdown here will also affect the position dropdown in the comparison chart. So the next section is the top 5 statistics. This simply indicates which 5 stats the chosen player is ranked the highest in from all the players in your uploaded file. And then below that we have the statistics list section, in which you can view each statistic in each of the column groups. So you can see all the goal related stats within the goal column group. And we go down to penalties, you can see all the penalty ones, for example. During the development of the Moneyball feature, I did encounter several occasions where FM exported incorrect statistics. Now I go over all of these stats involved
in the Moneyball tutorial page in the Can Export It Football Manager Data Be Inaccurate section. So be sure to give that a quick read before proceeding. The inconsistency in these stats do suggest a need for caution in interpreting these statistics. So not done there. On top of all the Moneyball features, I have also added a few smaller updates. First of which is adding roll scoring view files for older Football Manager games. So if you're not playing FM24 and are playing FM28 onwards, you can download the updated views zip file from this button or from the download views tutorial page. Within the extracted zip folder, there will be directories for each of the older Football Managers, and within each will be free player roll scoring views. Now, I haven't tested out in any older FMs, but it's possible that the FM20 views may also work there. The next update was adding the ability to view hidden, current and potential ability values in the roll score calculator. When I say current and potential ability values, what I'm talking about here are the hidden values that you can access via the in-game editor, and not the star rating assigned by your scouts or assistant. If you have purchased and are using the in-game editor in your Football Manager save, and you want to view players' current and potential ability hidden values within the FMDataLab roll scoring calculator, you now can. You can download the updated views zip file from this button or from the download views tutorial page. There will be 3 new view files appended with the underscore hidden that you will need to import into your Football Manager save. This will then add the hidden, current ability and potential ability columns. If you're using an older version of Football Manager, you will need to add the current ability and potential ability hidden columns to your views before uploading to FMDataLab, as I've only ever purchased the in-game editor for FM24 specifically for this. It's not something I actually use, so I can't actually go back and purchase some older FMs to do it myself. So unfortunately that's on you to do that one. Then I touched on the toggling the table filters visibility earlier, so you can just reference that. So then the final update was the score badge design update. So the score badges are the visualized values that you will see on the roll score table view to display the player's roll score for any given role. The score badge colors have been enhanced to be a brighter gradient. Previously some of the badge colors were a little dim, but now they're more vibrant, improving visibility and making it easier to distinguish between different values. The same color gradient is also applied to the stat badges in the Moneyball table. That's it for now. I know it's a big chunky update. If you do find any issues with the Moneyball table at all, or potentially that some of your exported data seems to be incorrect in Football Manager, let me know and I can have a look at it. There's some other features people have mentioned that I will probably go on to in the next update. Hopefully in the next month or two, I'll hopefully get to those. I'm really hoping that the the new Football Manager, I know it's on a new game engine, it's using Unity. I hope that they stick with the whole exporting data. I think that's been a thing since Championship Manager, so hopefully it's not something they're going to remove, because that will basically kill FMDataLab for FM25 at least. But anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the new Moneyball update. Do let me know if you have any issues and I'll try and fix them, but that's it for now. Goodbye.